So I never thought I'd be at this age down on my hands and knees picking through ramen noodles to find the noodles with the least amount of sand on them. But
eating off the ground.
There I was.
Welcome to the Wilderness Wavelength Podcast.
This is the Wilderness Wavelength Podcast. Welcome to it. I'm George. Happy to have you guys with us tonight. And joining us, one of our favorite guests, Scott Sunderwald.
Hey, good
Welcome
to be
back
back
to the show, Scott. And you were pretty excited about this guest coming in.
Yeah, we have a special guest here. He's my neighbor, and that's the beauty of living in a town like Hinton.
Everyone's your neighbor.
Everyone's your neighbor. In the Northern Rockies, there's just so many folks who climb and bike and hike and paddle and hunt and fish. And Mike's one of these guys. He's been in the great outdoors for many, many years. So he's got so many things we could chat about. But the big thing, I think, this evening is the Great Divide mountain bike route that he just finished, 2,700 kilometers over 40 days solo. So that's pretty exciting. We'll dive into that. But we may have to have him back to talk about some climbing experiences, including some falls. He told me he's got some good bear stories, avalanche stories. He's got a good near lightning strike on the top of a mountain too, and some hypothermia stuff. So yeah, not a dull moment with this guy here. So welcome, Mike.
Welcome to the show, Mike.
Yeah, well, thanks, guys. I do want to clarify one point first, though, Scott, is that I didn't finish it. I did 2,700 kilometers of about 4,500. So
okay,
I got I got as far as Steamboat Springs, Colorado, but the route actually goes all the way to the Mexican border.
Yeah, I was Googling this last night because I was trying to figure out what it was, because I was first thinking Cardinal Divide, and I was like, okay, that's a nice area to go. But
yeah, that's pretty short.
Yeah. Continental Divide. Yeah, like you're from Alaska. Is that kind of the tip up there? Where's that start?
No, I started. Well, a bit of a story. So last year I rode from Hinton. So there's different starting points on this thing.
Yeah.
Some people just start at the U.S.-Canadian border. Kind of the traditional, like, this thing was designed by a few guys, I think in the 1990, somewhere, early 1990s. And when they first designed it, it started at Banff. And it's still kind of the traditional starting point. But then somebody got this ingenious idea, well, why don't we go start all the way up at Jasper?
Mm-hmm.
So if you wanted to do the entire thing, it's 5,600 kilometers or something.
Yeah.
So it would start at Banff, and then actually ride kind of northeast to Hinton and then back south again. I didn't need to ride the Jasper. I've done that enough times.
You've seen that one before.
So last year I rode from, just to see how I'd like to do this bike packing thing, I kludged together an old bike, and it was pretty awful setup, actually. And I rode from here down Rob Road and then the Forestry Trunk Road and crossed over this Elk Pass and down into BC, and I ended up in Elkford, BC. So I got as far as there last year, and in spite of it being kind of a miserable trip, because in the 10 days that I was on the road, I had 3 days without a soaking thunderstorm.
Ew.
But anyways, I decided for some reason I wanted to go further, and so I started from Elkford this year.
And are you on a mixture of gravel, paved, mountain bike trails? Like, what's a typical road condition for you with that?
Well, it varies a lot, actually. I'll say majority is a crappy gravel road. So something like Rob Road here is a cream.
Yeah.
But there's some roads, something like that. Yeah, typically nothing that wide. I mean, that's like a highway. And it varies. I think there's probably about 20% of it that's pavement, because they got to hook all these roads together somehow.
Is it marked? Like there's signs saying you're on? No. You just following like a GPS then, or?
Well, yeah, there's maps for all of it, and I had a navigation program as well.
Okay. Yeah.
but especially Montana was pretty rugged terrain. Really steep, washed out, rocky. You know how roads get when they're, gravel roads or dirt roads get when they're really steep. All the fines wash out of it.
Yeah.
Well, washboard, that was another thing. I mean,
Yeah.
endless kilometers of washboard.
So you're sharing the road a lot then with industry like logging trucks, oil and gas. That's got to be dusty and even a little dangerous at times, eh? How was
Here and there. I mean, a lot of it, I would ride for 2 or 3 days without seeing a vehicle.
Wow.
Yeah. So, especially in Montana, some of it's pretty backwater.
Huh. What was the inspiration for doing it?
Well, like a friend of mine put it one day, he said, "Mike, I've always thought you were a little insane, but now I'm sure." So, anyways, I don't know. I've always been up for a challenge.
Yeah.
I like doing hard things, and it's just in my nature, I guess.
2,700 kilometers is a hell of a trip.
Yeah, it was a bit of a grunt, all right.
So you do some training for it then?
Yeah, I mean, I've been mountain bike racing a lot in my life.
Okay.
And yeah, I did train. I did a lot of road biking and some gravel touring. Before I took off this year. But typically, I do a lot of mountain biking and road biking and stuff. So.
I hope to be half as fit as Mike at his age.
Yeah.
Like I think you could hike or bike most 20-year-olds into the dirt and
I don't know. I mean, yeah, I guess there's lots of them are pretty unfit, but I did find out that I was not 35 anymore on this trip.
Was there a point where you're like, I've had enough? Or like, was this the end goal for you? Or were you just going to see, I want to see how far I get in 40 days? Or
when I started this whole thing, people kept asking me, how far are you going to go? How far are you going to go?
Yeah.
And the only answer I had for them was I'd go until I can't stand it anymore.
Yeah.
So I'd kind of set a goal for myself. Okay, well, I'll see if at least I can get through Montana.
Yeah.
And I got through Montana, and I still feeling pretty good. So I went through Idaho and then off into Wyoming. And I guess it was towards the end of Wyoming I started to realize I was just starting to get a little tired.
Yeah.
I wasn't recovering as well as I would like to be, and
you're going up some pretty steep terrain. I think you told me how many times you crossed the divide itself.
Yeah, so by the time I got to Steamboat, I'd crossed the Great Divide 17 times.
17.
Sheesh.
So you're at pretty high elevation. Hey, what was your highest elevation that you're hitting there on those treks?
Well, not too bad in Montana, Wyoming thing. Probably 8,000 or 9,000 feet,
Okay.
probably,
Yeah,
and a
it's
lot of
getting up
Montana.
To put that in perspective for folks around here, that's the top of Pyramid Mountain
Yeah.
in Jasper.
Top of Rush Miette.
Yeah.
It's about 9,000 feet.
Yeah.
Sheesh.
But interestingly, once I got into Wyoming, you get into some of this kind of desert terrain, and the average altitude was 7,000 or 8,000 feet, and it's desert, right? High desert. So, yeah. So, anyways, I got through Montana, felt pretty good. Did Idaho, and then by the time I was pretty much through Wyoming, I was starting to realize that I just wasn't recovering very well anymore. I actually took a couple of days off in this town called Rawlins, Wyoming,
Okay.
which is kind of pretty much the southern end of Wyoming.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, if I take 2 days off, I'll feel pretty good. But didn't do it. And I was afraid, if I kept going, I might get sick. So no, I don't need that.
So
I'd be curious to see.
I mean, like I said, I'm not a teenager anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can guess how old I am, but
You look young. What's the setup look like for you then? You got a tent on the back of your bike? Like
yeah. Well, I
everything
mean,
real
I've
minimal?
got it's sort of the old bike touring setup is a bunch of panniers, right?
Yeah.
Saddlebags.
Saddlebags.
Well, we've kind of evolved from that. It's a bit difficult to explain, but I had a kind of a right behind my seat. I had kind of like a bag there, and then I had 2 small bags on each side of that. You could call them really small panniers, but
Yeah.
I had 2 of those, and then I had what they call fork bags.
Okay.
So the old days they had a pannier rack out in front, which doesn't work well on rough terrain like that.
Yeah.
So we had these bags that basically just attached to the forks on the front. So I had 2 of those, and then I had another bag hanging off the handlebars, and then another bag inside the frame of the
Sheesh.
bike.
That's a lot to unpack and pack.
Yeah, if I had to say, my least favorite part of the whole trip was unpacking and packing every day. Like I really didn't find that very pleasurable at all.
Yeah. So any wipeouts or flat tires on this big
Oh
journey?
yes, all the above.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a pretty bad spill. I guess partway through Montana, I was going down a really steep road full of ruts and loose gravel and rocks and stuff, and all of a sudden I was on the ground and smacked myself up pretty good.
Oof.
Yeah, I kind of thought for a while I might have been out of the game at that point, but
Yeah.
I managed to get up and ride to Butte and spent the next 36 hours in an ice bath pretty much.
What are you hauling for food then with you? Bag of rice and one of those things, and
Well, pretty much
Fishing rod?
anything really well dried that isn't going to take long to cook.
yeah,
Because, you don't have like your 2-burner camp stove to
yeah,
cook on.
Lots of itchy ban.
Well, I did eat some Ichiban, but the truth is I tried to avoid that because it would be too easy to just eat that
Mm-hmm.
3
Yeah.
meals a day, But I found, these things you can go down to the sports store and spend $15 a meal on
Oh
these
yeah, like
freeze-dried things.
dehydrated. Yeah, yeah.
I can't eat them.
No.
I hate them. I
Yeah.
hate them. So I ate a lot of like instant mashed potatoes and
Okay.
these Knorr KNRO noodly things, with
Right.
they have a few different flavors of
Add
that.
water, mostly.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're supposed to add margarine and all the rest of it, but no, I didn't do that. I just, you had to heat them up a little bit.
Now, you had some mouse and deer encounter with the food. I can't remember what that story was, but why don't you dive into that?
Well, the deer encounter was, I'll step back from that a second. I was pretty sure I was going to run into a grizzly bear. I mean, there was some pretty serious grizzly sign in some of it. And that was in the Montana part where I was pretty much alone the whole time through all the northern part of Montana. And if I had to say that part of it was probably some of the most concerning part because you're all by yourself in the middle of nowhere and there's grizzly sign everywhere. Anyways, but I had stopped for a whole day at a little campground in sort of northern Montana, and this white-tailed deer kept coming over to visit me. She'd become kind of a friend of mine, I guess. Anyways, one night I'm in my tent, and she decided to graze around my tent, and all I could hear was this chomp, chomp,
Yeah.
chomp, chomp, all the way around my tent. So I finally got tired of that. I got up and tried to shoo her away. She wasn't going to leave. So anyways, the next morning, I always put my helmet up on top of the bike to keep the mice and stuff out of. But she had knocked my helmet off my bike and ate all the foam out of the inside.
Oh
of
wow.
it.
She wanted the salt, eh?
Yeah, after the
Yeah.
salt.
Wow.
But I got to when I got to Whitefish, I went into a bike shop there and to see if they had any helmet foams, and the lady in there laughed and she said, "Were you at Two Chuck Campground?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Yeah, somebody comes in here every week."
That
deer ate the foam out of their
My
helmet.
goodness.
Wow.
Hate to see the stomach of that deer. And then you had an encounter. Something got into your food there.
Yeah, well, when I was in the Great Basin, so I don't know if you guys know much about the geography of Wyoming, but it turns into, after Pinedale, it turns into this thing. It's called the Great Divide Basin. And it's kind of an interesting place because we all think that the water, runs either to the Arctic Ocean or the Pacific Ocean or the Atlantic Ocean, but it doesn't go anywhere there. It's kind of trapped. They call it a basin because the water just doesn't go to any ocean. And it's basically kind of a desert. The north end of it's pretty rugged, I think one day I crossed the divide 3 times, but and then the water kind of becomes a problem. So, when you hear all these stories, you might have to go like 200 kilometers without water, and riding 200 kilometers without water to refill is,
Yeah. It's a stretch.
your bike already weighs 75 pounds, and you got to add 5 or 6 liters of water
Yeah.
on top of that. So anyways, I'd stopped at this spring, and by the time I figured out I was going to mount all the extra water and stuff on my bike, it was getting late, so I just camped there. And I guess when I was going to bed for the night, when I closed up my food bag, I didn't do a real good job of it. And when I went out in the morning, this little fat mouse came whipping out of my food bag.
Big grin on his face.
Oh yeah, he was pretty full. If I'd have caught him, I would have had to eat him. But
Yeah.
he pretty much wrecked all my food.
Wow.
So now I got 180 kilometers to ride, and there's no food.
Yeah.
Well, so he had basically ruined everything except one package of instant mashed potatoes. He'd only ate the corner off of that, so I salvaged that. And speaking of ramen noodles, there was 2 packages of that in there that he hadn't eaten. Anyways, this is a funny story. It wasn't funny at the time, but it was funny. So now the mouse has got most of my food except for 2 packages of ramen noodles. So I thought, well, I got to have breakfast. I had to ride at least 90 kilometers that day, maybe 100. Actually, it was faced it with 180. So I decided, well, I got to eat some breakfast. So I cook in my little pot of ramen noodles down on the ground, and it's dark, and I'm taking the fly off my tent, and I kicked over the pot of noodles.
Oh, boy.
So I never thought I'd be at this age down on my hands and knees
Yeah.
picking through ramen noodles to find the noodles with the least amount of sand on them.
Yeah.
But
Eating off the
there I
ground.
was.
Wow.
Did you have a backup plan? Like, if something happened, like you said, you're alone there's a grizzly around or whatever. Like, was there? How were you? Like, did you have a solar panel with charging your cell phone?
Well, I did have one of these battery pack things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I have an inReach that I kept with me
Yeah.
all the time. In fact, what I was doing was I had this inReach set up so that it would spit out a GPS location every half hour,
Oh, okay.
and then people could just follow me on a map. Lots
Yeah.
of people followed me on a map.
Cool. Yeah. Did you run into a lot of people doing the same thing you were doing?
Further south I got, the more people I ran into.
Yeah.
Up north, almost nobody.
Huh.
Once I got, halfway through Montana, I started to run into a few people.
Yeah.
By the time I got pretty much, I'll say, 3/4 of the way through Montana, I was running into people pretty much every day.
Yeah.
So going back to the water, because I'm always interested in wilderness survival stuff. How many liters are you drinking on average on a warm day like that, you're biking how many kilometers a day? Like, what's your intake and what's your supply? Because it's got to be tough to find water through some of those places.
Well, the worst place was this whole Great Basin thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like I say, there was one place where I might have had to go 180 kilometers, but fortunately, at the 90-kilometer point, which there was supposedly water, but you had to plan because there might not be. I was always carrying about 3 liters, and then counting on the fact that I'd run into a creek or something somewhere and filter some water to get me through the day. Fortunately, when I was in the Great Basin, it was fairly cool. It was only getting up to about 20 during the day.
So were you drinking like 4 or 5 liters a day? Doing
yeah.
that? Yeah. And did you have to add electrolytes or anything?
All the time.
Yeah. You had like stuff you're dumping in the water? Or
yeah,
what are you doing?
I had these little electrolyte tablet things they throw in the water and they dissolve. And I pretty much put electrolyte in everything.
Yeah.
Especially up further north, like all the way through BC and pretty much most of Montana. Some days it was hitting 30 degrees. So
yeah,
you go through a lot of water at that point.
You ever do anything like that, Scott?
No, I do a bit of mountain biking, but it's not really my thing. So I'm intrigued, especially with the 40 days solo.
Yeah.
That's a long time. And did you have bear spray with you?
Oh yeah, I had bear bangers and bear spray.
Okay. Yeah. And you had to do a bear hang every night type of thing, or?
Well, I mean, a lot of the campgrounds that I went to in the States, especially Montana, had bear lockers. I mean, when I did it last year, and even in BC this year, you had to hang your food. And actually, I got a thing called a bear bag. Have you ever seen those? They're like a bear-proof bag.
Is that the Kevlar one?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they can gum it up a little bit.
Yeah,
but
they can munch up your food pretty good, but
they can't break through.
At least they wouldn't get all the food like the most did.
Yeah.
We should get into this because 40 days solo. Was that like your longest trip solo you've done?
Yeah.
Yeah. How did it feel after? Were you invigorated? Were you like, I got to go and see some civilization now? Or
I think I was feral.
Yeah.
It was a little interesting coming back to having people around all the time. It's not like I didn't have people around on the trip, but they would, they kind of bleeped in and out of life a bit, but all of a sudden my wife and I had to figure out how to get along again.
Yeah. Our podcast question of the week this week was, have you ever camped solo, and what's the longest trip you've done on your own? What's the longest you've been out, Scott, solo?
Oh, man, I haven't done really anything super extended, mostly because, with a wife and kids and job, it's it's hard to get any time away. But I've done plenty of solo trips, lots of survival trips. Still, now I like to go solo camping, winter camping. It's good for the soul to get out in nature and reflect.
Yeah, for sure.
We had some good comments coming in. Beth said Rock Lake was her first solo camps, quite magical. Joanne said she just did nearly a 10-week trip this summer, just her and her dog. So,
wow.
Yeah, Owen just got back from 35 days in the bush. Carrie said she did 7 to 9 nights, but in a trailer in an actual campground. And there was a few comments coming in, like some people just said I would go for 1 or 2 days, and it was like enough to be out there and just kind of reconnecting with nature. Crystal said no, she's never done it. She's too nervous to do it as a female. So there was a lot of comments on her comment saying, don't worry, just be prepared, sort of thing. But Leslie said her husband does it all the time. Longest I've done is 1 week. So yeah, it seems like a lot of people into it. 40 days seems like a long time. Daryl commented, though, this was kind of what made me think of your trip, Mike, too, is he just did 47 days of camping trip on a motorcycle. Would you? I mean, you went pedal biking on a mountain bike. Would you want to do it on a motorbike? Is that up your alley too, or is this like this kind of more your style?
Oh, it would certainly be a lot less painful.
Yeah.
But it's kind of funny because when you're talking about people, I know I was camped at this one campground, and this young guy came over and he's chatting with me, and he was a bike packer too,
Yeah.
and he says, "Yeah, it's pretty cool you're doing this solo." And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, he says, well, so I've been kind of thinking about doing some of this kind of stuff solo." And he said, what would be the biggest thing I would need to be able to get used to do it? And I said, well, first of all, you got to make up your mind you're not afraid to be alone in the wilderness.
Yeah.
And he kind of went, okay, well, maybe it's not for me. Because it has its moments, I'll tell you. I mean, it's, you start having bike troubles, or some mouse eats all your food, or you're trying to find water.
Yeah.
And sometimes just find a place to camp or
Yeah.
pitch a tent for the night,
Yeah. What I mean, so you're doing the ultralight camping. Do you have like a certain piece of gear you'd recommend someone taking? Like what would the piece of gear you use all the time, or favorite piece?
I could tell you a lot of things not to take.
Yeah.
But I had like a little one-man tent. It weighed less than 2 pounds, actually. It was super light.
Yeah. Using a jet boil then? Is that
No, I used actually a whisper light.
okay?
It runs on. It's a multi-fuel stove you can use.
Oh yeah.
Right.
It was kind of interesting when I would pull up to a gas pump and take 45 cents of unleaded gas and put it in my little bottle.
What's it called? A whisper light?
Yeah.
Whisper Light. They were famous back in the 90s, I think, or something. Yeah.
Yeah, they
I
still
remember
are.
those,
But I mean, I was kind of wishing I would have. I've got jet boils. I didn't like a jet boil because it's hard to cook in them. They're just like
a big can.
So I kind of wished I would have had a little stove that used the little propane canisters or butane canisters.
Yeah.
But I kind of was afraid that it might be harder to find those things in some places, which turned out not to be a problem. It would have been okay. But the thing about the whisper light is you can, pull up to a gas pump and fill your little bottle.
Yeah.
And, they'll burn just about anything.
You got like a rollout grill or something then?
No.
No?
Just a little pot.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah, there's no 2-burner camp stoves.
No. I mean, I think it's an amazing trip. I just like, for me looking at it, it's like, man, it's a long way to go. And then when you get to where you're like, okay, I've had enough, then what do? You say you hitchhike home, or you hop a plane ride, or?
Well, that's part of why I quit when I did. But it's because that was part of the challenge. How am I going to get home?
Yeah.
You don't go through any very big towns.
It's not a loop you're doing either.
No, and so I mean, I went through Whitefish, which is kind of a, fair-sized resort town, and went through Helena, which is the capital of Montana. But I mean, it's only like 20,000 people. Other than that, those were the 2 biggest places I'd gone through. The rest of them are pretty much little villages or small towns. But when I was starting to decide I was getting tired, I knew I had the Steamboat Springs coming up, and it's a resort town. It's not that big, but it's a resort town. They've got 2 big ski resorts right there, so it's a tourist place. Let's put it that way. So I started to do some research and found out they had flights that went from there to Denver, and then I could hop on a flight from Denver to come home.
Oh yeah.
And no problem taking your bike on the plane there.
Oh, I didn't even try.
Oh.
I had a bike. I found a bike shop there in Steamboat, and I went in there to try to get a box that they ship new bikes in, and the guy says, "Oh yeah, well we can ship it for you if you want," and that was a no-brainer. I said, "Okay,
Yeah,
you do it."
Done.
So
Right
I was faced with having to take it all apart and pack it in this thing, and this guy said, "Yeah, for like $150, we'll take it all apart and pack it for you." So
Perfect.
Wow, that's
How
good.
at her, buddy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's on next on the biking list? You got another spot you want to go?
Well, I would like to finish this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like start in Steamboat Springs and
Yeah.
keep going? Yeah.
Yeah. I would like to.
Because
I
are you
feel-
going all the way down through Mexico then?
No, just to the Mexican border.
Just the Mexican border.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like it's unfinished business now. You know?
Yeah. How many kilometers left then? Couple thousand?
Pretty close to 2,000.
Yeah. Mostly downhill. No.
Well, that was part of it too. I was getting kind of nervous because it was getting cold.
Yeah.
Like it was a fairly high altitude.
Yeah.
Quite a bit of the
Most
time.
of the trip.
And my water bottles were frozen in the morning a lot of the time.
Wow.
And we had some pretty good storms. Now in Colorado, there is one pass that's 9,500 feet, and two passes that are over 11,000 feet that I was going to have to go through.
Sheesh.
And I was thinking, I don't want to push my bike through a foot of snow.
Yeah.
So that was kind of what I was thinking I might be faced with.
Mhm.
Now, I've talked to some people since then that have been through there, and I guess it wasn't a problem, but could have just as easily. I mean, if that was here, there's probably 3 feet of snow up
Oh,
at
yeah.
11,000 feet by
At
now.
those heights, yeah. You never know what you're going to get, right?
Wow. Would that be a next year thing?
Probably.
Next
yeah,
summer? Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the idea of it. I think it'd be cool to finish it. Is there like a club that you kind of like a group or something, the people that are doing it that you keep in contact with, or?
Well, I did ride with these guys from South Africa for 2 or 3 days. I guess 3 days.
Yeah.
And there was another couple. They were kind of all at the same time
Yeah.
that I rode together with. And so we've been texting a bit. And actually, they just texted me today that they had just finished.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Wow.
So,
That's man, that's a cool adventure.
yeah, they started in Banff and went all the way down.
Yeah. Cool. Scott, we got a couple Ask Scott questions too we've got to get into on this.
Let's do it.
We if you want to send a question for Scott, wildernesswave@outlook.com. Fire those in. This one from Jen. She says, Scott, what is your favorite aspect of bushcraft? You can actually follow Scott too along on Instagram at Northern Rockies Bushcraft. But she said, what is your favorite aspect of bushcraft? Is it building shelters, cooking, or just trying something new in general?
Oh, wow. What a question. It's so vast, bushcraft, shelter, water, fire, food, weapons, tools, medicine. I think probably the creativity and pushing myself. Like right now, tonight, I've got fresh blisters all over my hands because I was spending a couple hours trying to get fires going with the hand drill, trying out different types of wood. And it's the evil cousin of the bow drill. So, yeah, I think for me, it's always pushing the limit into a new area, something I haven't yet tried or mastered. And there's, 2 lifetimes worth of stuff you could learn or more. So that's what makes it fun for me.
Yeah. Anything on the list for, so you're working with the hand drill now? What's the winter project coming up?
Yeah, well, we'll fill the freezer, right? So a lot of hunting going on right now, and that's kind of main
Last time
focus.
you were on the podcast, I think you were heading out that weekend with your kids to go hunting.
Yeah, we ended up getting 2 deer, so
Nice.
that's a good start, but the freezer's still a long way from full. So, yeah, we'll keep chipping away at that. I've been doing that for decades. That's how we eat throughout the year. So,
Yeah.
It's a major focus for sure. But, yeah, I've always got different crafts on the go. I've got a U-bow that I need to make. It's been curing in the basement and tinkering with different forms of fishing and rope and you name it. I got way too many projects on the go. Yeah.
You do any bushcraft stuff when you're out there, Mike? Like, are you you making your own fishing rod when you're pedal biking around, or?
Well, I mean, I've done a fair bit of, I'll say, quasi bushcraft.
What does that mean?
I'm not it means I do stuff in the bush, but I don't build all my stuff from scratch like Scott does.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, if I had to survive,
Yeah.
if somebody dropped me in the forest
Yeah.
with nothing but a hunting knife, I could survive, but
Yeah.
it would hurt.
Yeah. Would you? We asked that question too. The survival thing. Would you take a knife or a lighter with you if you had the choice?
I can only have one or the other.
Yeah.
One or the other,
It
man.
would be a knife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Think you start a fire pretty easy?
No, not easy.
No.
That's why Scott has blisters on his hands.
Yeah. Were you able to get a fire going then?
Well, I got lots of embers, smoke in there, but it's tough up here. The hand drill is really challenging. So you're not using a piece of cordage like you do for the bow drill.
Yeah.
So it's just all hand speed and strength. And the real critical thing is getting the right materials. So you can have the technique down pat, but if you don't have the right materials, perfectly dry, it's not going to happen. So yeah, I'm trying like 5 different spindles and 5 different fireboards, and then suddenly you get the right combo, and it's magic, right?
Yeah, we didn't really talk about that. Just when you mentioned perfectly dry, I was wondering, Mike, did you encounter like some rainstorms on the bike trip? Was there some days where like, maybe I should just call it quits?
I did get rain.
Yeah.
Off and on. Nothing like I had last year. Last year I was soaked every day. But
What was last year?
when I went from here to Elkford,
Okay. Yeah.
I got soaked. Except for 3 days, I got soaked every day.
Yeah.
But no, it was actually the weather was actually pretty good for me.
Yeah.
But I was storm stayed in my tent a couple of times.
Yeah.
But it was pretty fortunate during the day. I did not get really, really soaked too often.
Yeah. That makes
I
things a
got
little
wet,
more
but-
livable.
Wet, but not awful soaked.
Yeah.
Worst part was when I lost my rain jacket.
On the trip?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You lost it.
My wife keeps asking me, how do you lose a rain jacket?
Tell her the deer ate
I
it.
said, well, dear, if I knew the answer to that, I wouldn't have lost it.
Yeah.
But I did lose my rain jacket, so there was a little bit of desperate time trying to round up one of those again.
Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding.
Scott, a question from Brendan came in. What do you consider the most important knot?
Oh, wow. I would have to, of course, it depends what you're doing. Mike's a climber here and would probably agree the figure 8 for climbing is kind of state-of-the-art knot, super solid, easy to identify, pretty bomber. So that's, if you're in the climbing world, the figure 8, it's really great knot. The Europeans like the bow line for some reason. But figure 8's really, really good to identify, especially if it's getting dark or your hands are cold or whatever, you're starting to get tired.
Yeah.
As far as bushcraft, there's a knot called the Canadian cinch knot that everybody should learn. It's world famous, not just Canadian, but essentially it's a type of slip knot. And the tighter you pull on it, the tighter it gets. So I use that for everything. If I'm making makeshift snowshoes or shelters or baskets or tying an arrowhead to a stick, it's the cinch knot. It's my first go-to.
Canadian cinch knot.
Canadian cinch knot.
Okay.
Look it up. It
I'm gonna
should
look it
be
up.
on everybody's repertoire for knots. But yeah, you don't need a ton. I probably use about 5 to 7 different knots depending on the situation, but those 2 are kind of my go-tos.
Mike, you use any fancy knots you got a favorite knot?
Favorite? No, I don't know. I mean, I would agree with Scott that the figure of 8 is a pretty good versatile knot, but probably it's a little awkward for a few things where a bowline knot would be more useful.
Yeah.
And pretty much bowline used to be all the old climbing days. Guys used all the bowline knots, and like I said, I guess they still do it in Europe, but the figure of 8's kind of taken over from that because they're, I don't know, I can't imagine a bowline's not slipping very far, but apparently they can.
Yeah.
So figure of 8's have kind of taken over from that, but a clove hitch is really useful. And the reason I like clove hitch, and it's not something you anchor off of, but when you're trying to equalize an anchor or something like that, clove hitch is nice because they're adjustable.
Yeah.
and just kind of push one side of the end of the rope, and you can
Yeah.
adjust it over to equalize things. And they're really fast. You can
I
whip
think
a-
that's my dad's knot too, is the clove hitch. He's always using that one.
Yeah, you can. I mean, once you know how to do, once you've done the clove hitch a few times,
Yeah.
you can whip it off in like 3 seconds flat.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that's a good answer for you there, Brandon. Yeah, I'm gonna look up some of these on YouTube. I'm terrible at tying knots, so I just tie lots, and
If you
sometimes I'm
can't
just-
tie knots, tie
Yeah.
lots, right?
then I'm using
Yeah.
a knife to take everything apart. But
Trucker's hitch is also pretty cool, right? The one that you can just reef on and make that pulley system. That's pretty handy if you're tying up some heavy tarps or something. Or well, truckers use it all the time, right? Hence the name. Or tying canoe onto your roof of your truck or something.
Yeah. You still into climbing, Mike?
Well, I can't rock climb much anymore. I got injured pretty good a few years ago, and it
Injured
kinda-
rock climbing?
Pardon?
Like injured when you were rock climbing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I took a bad leader fall and mangled my foot up pretty good. So
Yeah.
I want to hear that story. That was at Skaha Bluffs.
yeah,
I know you got lots of stories. We may have to get you back on some of these, but maybe we can dig into that one tonight. You were lead climbing.
yeah, I was leading, and it wasn't real run out, but I don't know if everybody that doesn't know, when you're leading, if you fall, you're going to fall as far as your last piece of gear
Yeah.
times 2, right? So I guess I was probably about 10 feet above my last piece of gear. Well, it was actually a bolted route, but it was Skaha's got lots of bolts, but for some reason in this particular spot it was about 10 feet, and I peeled off on this route, and I guess in 20 feet you get a fair bit of velocity going on,
Yeah.
and I'm pretty sure the only thing I've been able to figure out is there was a little ledge about an inch wide, and your natural tendency is to kind of stick your feet out kind of thing, and I guess I clipped that ledge with my foot and
Oof.
busted it up pretty good.
Yeah.
You broke some toes, or what happened there?
Actually, I broke every bone in my foot, and well, not just broken, but they were all dislocated. All my metatarsals were in a little pile on one side of my foot, and most people don't know what it is, but a Liz Frank injury. So across the top of your foot where all the metatarsals tie in,
Yeah.
it's called a Liz Frank, I don't know, bone or whatever. Well, anyways, what I got was a Liz Frank injury, and so not only did I break every bone, but I dislocated them all. So it was quite a hardware show by the time they put all that back together again.
Affecting your biking at all then, or?
Yeah, it gets a bit sore now and then biking, but I can't hike like I used to unless I wear a heavy boot.
Okay. Yeah.
And yeah, it's pretty much put an end to putting my foot in a rock shoe.
Yeah.
I still do a little bit of stuff with my kids, and that, but no, it doesn't work very good anymore. I can still mountaineer. I can still, put a heavy boot on.
Yeah. Crazy. Scott, you got any rock climbing plans or ice climbing plans this winter or anything like that?
I'm not much of an ice climber, mostly rock climbing, summertime stuff. So I put away my climbing gear now. I'm ready,
Yeah.
thinking of hot tenting.
Oh, yeah.
That's my favorite. The
Yeah.
colder it gets, the more exciting that is, Put on your snowshoes and pull your sled into the bush somewhere and set up camp. And
Yeah.
yeah, we'll have to get you out, George, and
Yeah. I'm
give it a go.
interested. I'm down. Like listening to your guys' stories, I feel like I've done nothing with my life. It's like,
You're still young.
Sorry to ruin your life.
yeah, I got so much stuff I want to get done now. Like, I was talking to a buddy the other day because I mentioned that you were coming on, Mike, and just did 2,700 kilometers. He wants to do a biking trip. I think it'd probably be more like a motorcycle moped, but in Europe.
Oh yeah.
You ever think of doing anything like that? That on the list?
I would love to.
Yeah.
It's just If I go home and tell my wife I want to get into one more expensive sport, it might not go well.
Your wife into biking at all or anything, or
Well, she has bikes,
Yeah.
but yeah, they're gonna last a long time. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. They're not getting the 2,700 kilometers on them.
No, not all in one trip. Anyways.
Yeah. I mean, it's a wild adventure. Is there any way, like, if people wanted to, do you got pictures of the adventure? Like, what's the best way for people to find out about it?
Well, I think what I did over on the trip was every time I took a day off, I wrote up a little story
Oh, cool.
of where I'd gone to
Yeah.
at that point,
Yeah.
and then I emailed it to a bunch of friends and family and stuff.
Oh, that's a great way to do it. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, I thought about putting it on social media, but in my demographic, people my age, a lot of people aren't on
yeah.
social media, so
Yeah.
I was kind of like, well, a lot of these people wouldn't get it off social media, so I was just emailing it to people, and
Yeah.
so I've compiled it all. Did I send you that compiled?
Yeah, I got the emails there. Yeah.
So
Cool.
I've compiled it all into one document now, and
Can I ask you how old you are?
70.
70? Wow. And my dad just turned 70 this year. Were you doing this your whole life then? Were you like always into biking or?
Pretty much. I've been pretty much my whole life. I was a competitive cross-country skier, cross-country ski racing.
Yeah.
I've done a fair bit of mountain bike racing, not as much of that, but
Yeah.
I've done a fair bit of mountain bike racing, some biathlon, and then of course climbing most of my adult life.
You grew up in this area then, or where you
No.
from?
No, I grew up in the prairies of southern Saskatchewan.
Oh yeah. And then how long you been in Hinton for?
27 years.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. 70 years old, 2,700 kilometers on the bike. Man.
That's impressive.
Yeah,
man.
that's pretty amazing actually. How do you stay in shape? Like, how do you stay fit? You just on your bike regularly, or?
Well, I have, what Newton's law is, right? Objects in motion tend to stay in motion.
Yeah.
Or just stay in motion.
Yeah,
So,
that's got.
yeah.
What's your plan for the winter then? Are you in for skiing and stuff too?
Oh yeah, I'll cross country ski,
Yeah.
and I've gotten into fat biking as well the last few years.
Okay. Yeah.
So we have our bike club here.
Yeah.
We groom about 18 or 20 kilometers of mountain bike trail to.
That's like the Bighorn Trail then, or?
No, not the Bighorn. We have groomed it, but no. What's typically, I'm sure you know where the lookout is there on.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we go up to there, and then there's a loop we do there, and then
Yeah.
there's actually a couple of loops that we groom, and then we groom some of the bike park as well.
Okay.
Year-round biking. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, I mean, I like it because, if I want to go to the Nordic Center, you need 3 hours. By the time you drive up there and,
Yeah.
and ski for a couple hours and come
Yeah.
home, it's like a 3-hour day. Whereas the fat biking, I just put on my boots and ride out my back gate, and you're
there.
you're biking. Yeah.
Yeah. What's the? The big thing now is e-biking. You into that at all, or is that cheating?
It's I wouldn't call it cheating.
No.
When they first came out, I was kind of, you're lazy kind of thing,
Yeah.
But I think I've changed my whole thinking about it now, because when they first came out, it was people that were looking for not having to work quite as hard, right? But what it's done now is it's gotten a lot of people out.
Yeah.
That wouldn't
Yeah.
have gotten out otherwise. I know people that hadn't biked for 25 years. They got an e-bike, and now they never put the thing away.
Yeah, they're out there.
So
Yeah.
it's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
My wife has one. And the honest truth, I've probably put more kilometers on it than she has, but don't tell anybody that.
Yeah. I got a bike given to me this summer, and I haven't used it as much as I want to, but That's the plan. The plan next summer is
Well,
to start
get in
biking.
shape. You can come with me for the rest of the Great
Yeah,
Divide.
2,000 kilometers.
There you
across
go.
Continental Divide, yeah.
Take your kid
Well,
along.
and don't forget the 100,000 feet of climbing.
Right. Yeah, 100,000 feet of climbing. Are you pushing your bike quite a bit too? Like if you're going up and down the, like you got to get off and do a lot of walking
Not
beside
much.
No?
Not much. There was some nasty sections. I did some pushing, but
it? Yeah.
not too much. Actually, the longest push that I had to do on my bike, it was flat.
Yeah.
It was so windy,
Yeah.
I couldn't ride.
Wow.
I had to actually walk.
Huh. If let's say someone listening to this right now wants to do a ride like this, what kind of advice do you have for them?
Well, get in shape to start with.
Yeah.
But make sure you got the right bike for what you're going to do.
Yeah.
I didn't have quite the right bike.
What kind
I
of bike
kinda-
you got?
Well, it's a kind of a heavy duty touring gravel bike,
Okay.
but I wished I would have had something with tires a little wider. Most of the people on this ride are riding bikes with no suspension for a couple of reasons. One, they're lighter, but two, you want your bike to be as simple as possible because you don't want a whole lot of
Right.
mechanical stuff that can fail.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are riding a quasi mountain bike
Yeah.
with no suspension. A few people had front suspensions. There was a couple guys I saw with full suspension bikes, but they were not the norm.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's getting the right bike, getting just the whole setup. There's a lot to fine tuning that. I mean, knowing what I did last year, I basically threw all that out.
Because
And
how
how-
long was your trip last year then?
700K.
And that was a couple days, like a week, or
It was 10 days.
okay, yeah,
But so I got a pretty good setup this year, but I would definitely change some stuff.
yeah. Any idea what the investment was, money wise, for like your setup? Was that scary to think about?
Well, I got a fairly expensive bike. It's like a full carbon bike. It was over $3,000, and then
Yeah,
the other gear that the bags and racks and all the rest of it that I put on, I used some really high end stuff.
yeah,
So it was probably another, I don't know, $1,800, $2,000. But you don't need a $3,500 bike.
yeah,
A good like even a front suspension, like a hardtail bike, mountain bike, would be fine.
So $5,000 investment. Yeah. I'll talk to the wife about it. See if I can
Yeah, you could do it. You
40
could do it a
days.
lot cheaper than that.
Yeah. I think if I like I think I would love to do it. I'm kind of in the same boat as Scott where you got the job, which interferes with a lot of activities I want to do.
Job interferes with your life, job, family.
Yeah. Yeah, working interferes with a lot of good things.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, if you would need, if you already had a bike,
Yeah.
if you already had a mountain bike,
I got a mountain bike. It's got suspension though, but
well, go with it.
all right.
Yeah, I mean, people were doing it.
Yeah.
People were doing it. The thing about a full suspension bike is it's a little bit more difficult to get all the gear on it. You've got to do some funky stuff.
Yeah.
But there was guys that had full suspension mountain bikes.
Yeah.
And you don't need to spend $2,000 on bags either. You could probably get away with $1,000 and
Yeah.
bags and stuff. 1,000, that might be a little light, but
Yeah, because you want something that's going to be as compact as possible, but also when you're hitting bumps and stuff, it's not jostling around.
yeah. Well, the first 3 days that I rode this year, my daughter, who lives in Calgary, rode with me for 3 days,
Yeah.
and she got
Okay.
a real cheap seat bag, and we spent every hour trying to tie the thing back up again.
yeah.
So so don't go too cheap.
Did you feel like was there a few spots where you had to, like, okay, I got to stop for a shower here? Like, were you had a
pretty
couple
much,
hotel
pretty
rooms?
much at the end of every day.
Yeah.
I mean, washing off in a nice cold creek isn't really.
That's not the
yeah.
ideal. Yeah, I mean, I just love the story of it. I think it's inspiring. I wanna hear you finish the trip. I mean, you did more than half of it already. Then.
Yeah, well, a fair bit more than half. Yeah, if you count the whole like this far northern section of it. Yeah.
You should have just left the bike there and said, "I'll come pick it up next year and
There
keep
you
going
go.
down."
I'll be honest. I actually did think of that.
Yeah.
Except I do want to make some changes on my bike idea.
Yeah.
But I actually did think about that.
Yeah. What would you add to the like? What were you missing on this trip that you would add for the next leg of it?
I wouldn't add anything. I would probably subtract a couple of things.
Yeah.
I mean, I jettisoned some stuff along the way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. A couple of things that I realized I wasn't using them enough, and they were adding weight, and so there's some.
Like your rain jacket.
Yeah.
Yeah. Get rid of it.
But yeah, I actually had to when I got the whitefish. So I had. Don't buy the inflatable, real comfy, cushy little nice sleeping pads.
Yeah.
I learned a lesson about them. By the time I got the whitefish, I was pumping the one I had up 3 times every night.
Oh yeah.
So when I got the whitefish, I bought a new one, and it lasted for about 2 weeks, and I was pumping it up in the middle of the night too. So I kind of actually gave up after a while and just made up my mind I was going to be sleeping on the ground by midnight. But the old thermal rest. That's the answer. Just I mean they don't have as much cushiness, but it beats waking up on the
they're
cold
consistent.
hard ground in the middle of the night.
A little more bomb proof. Yeah.
I think they're good if you're going on a 3 or 4 day backpacking trip.
Yeah.
But to go week after week, they're just not up to it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's well, you'll find Mike. We'll link you in the show notes here on your Instagram too, Mike. But Mike Meagher, so last name Meagher. You're thinking 1234 is probably your Instagram handle.
Yeah.
We'll link you into that one. Scott, you are northern.rockies.bushcraft.
You bet.
Yeah, we got to talk more hunting in the next couple episodes here. I was at once so far, saw nothing, but also didn't see any hunters. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Maybe I'm in the wrong areas. But at least I was out there, got the gun fired off a few times, and I can hit a target mostly.
Well, that's the nice thing about living up here. You can hunt and not worry about getting shot.
Yeah.
I've done some hunting down around Calgary, and it's like, I don't know.
It's a little tight. Yeah.
Yeah.
You going out hunting this year, Mike?
Oh, yeah.
What are you looking for?
Elk and whitetail.
Yeah. Any tips on where to go?
Just
Out there.
take a compass and draw a circle around here about 100 kilometers, and you'll find what you want.
I'm in the same boat. I'm looking for elk and whitetail, and I got a muley draw too, just north of town. So,
oh, nice.
Yeah, I got to commit some time to it now. It's like starting to cool off a bit. And when you guys got yours, was it pretty toasty? Like
it was warm. I had to take the next day off and butcher 2 deer in a hurry. So
yeah,
I don't like racing against the clock like that. But yeah, spikes to +20, and we talked about that last time on the meat podcast there. But things can spoil in a hurry.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So we'll get some more hunting. Aaron's coming on again. We're going to talk hunting methods in a future episode too. So that'll be good. That'll be a good one. And then we got a couple other interesting guests lined up in the next couple of episodes. So Mike, thanks for coming on.
Hey. Yeah.
This is great to have you.
Yeah.
Cool story.
We'll get you back before I want to talk to you before you go on the next leg of the trip too, and maybe I'll hop on the bike and see how that works.
As long as nobody makes me promise I'll go all the way to Mexico.
Yeah.
So when I started this, I had no idea how far I was going to go.
Were you thinking Mexico? Was that in the back
Not when
of your
I
mind?
started. No. No, I when I started, it was like, well, I'll see if I get through all the way Montana, I'll
Yeah.
be kind of happy. And then by the time I got well into Wyoming, I was thinking about trying to go the whole way.
Yeah.
But then I realized that I'm not 35 anymore, apparently, and I wasn't recovering very well.
Yeah.
Pushing, 80, 90 kilometers every day with a 75-pound bike is
Yeah. In the mountains.
a little rugged. Yeah,
Yeah.
on rough terrain. Yeah.
That's wild. Okay, well, thanks everyone for listening. If you want to send a question for Scott, go to wildernesswave@outlook.com. Ask Scott. You can do that. Or if you got just a suggestion for the podcast or a topic or a correction for something we've said that you disagree with, do it all there. Or you can find us on Instagram at wildernesswave as well. Thanks for coming on, Mike.
Yeah.
Scott.
Yeah,
Great
always
as
a pleasure.
always. We'll talk to you guys next week.
Wilderness Wavelength.